Jeep and sat down and was just staring at us like, what are these things? And I
Wow.
have a picture of that particular cub literally eye locking with us. It was quite amazing.
Wow. Wow. That must have been quite a trip. Okay,
Yeah.
let's get on to the topic here. So we're talking about the regional housing needs determination that was recently announced by the HCD and the FTC/ABAGS. As we know, the deadline for this is July 10th. And so I want to thank both of you guys for writing in and for joining my office hours on this. So I'd love to hear both of your perspective on this topic, and yeah, just have a discussion. And we have until what time? Do we have until Sabrina?
3:35.
3:35. So let's go ahead and get started. So maybe Jerry, if you could Jerry and Raghu, if you guys could introduce yourselves and just talk a little bit about your thoughts on the RHND.
Okay.
And RHMD stands for what?
Regional
Regional housing?
needs determination.
Okay. All right, I'll start. I'm Jerry Spieler. I live in Midtown Palo Alto. My husband Rick and 8 chickens. And been in Palo Alto for 25 years, moved from the East Coast. And definitely have seen a change, which is on the good side is the Silicon Valley after it recovered from the bomb. More people living here, more people working here, which I think is great. I like a robust economy, but I'm also concerned about our housing and also the impact in terms of, getting before the pandemic of getting downtown and trying to find a place to park, which hurts the businesses as well, and also makes it very frustrating for me as a resident.
Okay, great.
That's all I got.
Okay, great. Thank you, Jerry. And then Raghu, do you want to just
Yes. My name is Ranganath, and I've been a resident of South Palo Alto since 1981. I used to work for HP. Now I'm retired, and so I actually end up spending quite a bit of time on the streets, taking my dogs for a walk all over the place. But the concerns I have basically in terms of the housing, yes, I realize that the regional authorities want to increase availability of housing. At the same time, I'm worried about the quality of life issues in Palo Alto because crowding, parking, all those kinds of issues do impact me whenever I start moving around. Of course, once this pandemic started, there's hardly any moving around. Before that, the window of opportunity for me to move about town was probably between maybe 11 o'clock to 2 o'clock or so. Not that it was a breeze at that time, but it is tolerable. But so that is from a traffic point of view. And South Palo Alto also has seems to have the burden of having more and more housing put there. So local crowding also becomes an issue. And I'm definitely concerned with the City Hall not sticking to their own plans and conclusions that they've come to earlier, for example, in terms of limits on office space and increasing housing availability. This whole thing with the conversion of President Hotel really bothers me, that we are going back, and for some reason, the staff seems to all of a sudden be extremely sensitive to questions of lawsuits, and they're scaring the city council into making the decision. I find those things are rather disturbing. And so I really appreciate Councilman Tanaka for reaching out and saying you're willing to hear us out and talk to us and give us your perspective and see what can and cannot be done. Palo Alto alone cannot build all the housing that's needed to accommodate. Fortunately, unfortunately, too many job creators want to come to Palo Alto and create the jobs for the obvious reasons, because Stanford is there and it's easy and all that stuff. That might be good for them, but as the resident, it's not a good idea to just keep on adding lots of offices and then lots of housing. So that's definitely one of my main concerns and issues that bothers me, and I wanted to hear from you, see what you can contribute. I mean, I follow you and Lydia have tried to do things last few weeks, but for some reason, you being in the minority, not much has actually happened.
Well, I think the last few weeks of council have been, well, last week we didn't have council meetings, but the last few weeks of the council session, because we're officially on recess right now, the last few weeks of the council session has been pretty crazy. We had like 3 meetings in a row, which is not typical. Usually we have only 1 meeting a week, right? So, you know, not too bad. But we had 3 meetings in a row, and like the first one went past 1:30, and then the other was went past 12, right? And that's because we had this the end of the session, so the staff was trying to get us to hear a bunch of different things. So we had, I think the last 2 weeks we had like 5 meetings, which is about 5 times more. Well, maybe not 5 times, but usually we only have one meeting a week, so we had a lot more than usual. And these meetings were just going from 5 till like midnight, right? Much later. So yeah, so thank you both for calling in about this. So the I think the hotel you're talking about is the hotel president, right?
Yes, President Hotel Conversion. Yes.
Yeah. So
Pretty
that,
disturbing.
yeah. So you guys might not know about this, but our city attorney is going to be issuing a memo, or a public memo. So we got a lot of confidential information that we can't talk about publicly.
Yes.
But the city attorney is going to release. I don't know if she's done it yet. She might have done it. I haven't seen it, but maybe it's released yet. If not, it should be released soon. But she's going to release kind of the legal arguments. At least that's what she can do without exposing us as to what the process is. And that one was there's only so much I could say other than that. I think legally,
I understand.
There's not much the city council could do on that one.
Yes. You see, the thing, I have a comment to make on that one.
Sure.
See, the thing is, I followed this President Hotel Conversion for ever since the beginning, and it goes back to the city manager, the previous city manager, and Jonathan Late meeting with the interests and in effect saying that it's okay and things like that. That prompted that company from Chicago to buy. That's one of the arguments. Okay, the thing is, who exactly is Mr. Late? Whose interest is he representing is a question that needs to be raised, and it's been raised. In fact, I think you're aware of a guest opinion by the ex-mayor of Menlo Park, where she laid out beautifully all the concerns. She's a resident of Palo Alto, ex-mayor. She put it out in I think Palo Alto Weekly. It was a beautifully written article, and so there's no point in me repeating it. But the interest of this residents is what needs to be foremost in what people like Late and others are doing. They cannot be making promises to developers that ultimately turn out to bite us in the back, you know.
Well, I think it's not just Late. I think elected representatives and people that work for staff that work for the city, our job is to make sure that interest of the people that live here come first. I think that's
yes. I'm sorry, I'm not saying only Mr. Late, everybody. That's the job for which either you're elected or appointed. And so the city's long-term interests and welfare of the citizens, residents is what you're representing. So I think you have done a really nice job. I may not agree with all your decisions, but I pay attention to what you and all the other members of the city council have said and done in terms of voting. And I hope that this kind of stuff can be somehow stopped, because creating more and more jobs and more housing might be good for property taxes and the high salaries of the officials, not you guys. You don't get paid, unfortunately or fortunately. But all I can see is, yes, more revenue, and the pensions of the biggies are very nicely handled. While because this pandemic, for some reason, 70 people are going to be laid off, all those issues, you know.
Yeah.
So
Oh, that subventions is
Greg, I
actually,
have another,
sure, go ahead.
I'm sorry.
Jerry, go
Yeah,
ahead.
one of the things I forgot to mention, which has been a concern of mine for a long time, when we build new office space, how are we managing additional water to service all of these new buildings? Because it's a huge, issue. We're gonna have another major drought this year.
Yeah.
And every time we build, new facilities, they have to have water.
Yeah. Well,
And is that ever
that's
taken
actually,
into account? I guess not.
well, that's actually a really good question. Because I think you guys probably remember the last drought, right? I know from my own house, we had to turn off all of our sprinklers, right? Because we were told we're not supposed to water our
Yep.
lawn anymore. And so I turned off the
Yep.
sprinklers to my house, right? And a lot of my neighbors did. So all of our lawns turned brown, as I'm sure most of your guys did as well. But the other impact it had that was really sad was that a lot of trees like got sick or died, right? So I
yes,
could hear like the
Yeah.
tree in my yard. So I mean, it's not dead yet, but I've been trying to revive it. But because I stopped watering it for a few years, right? But water is actually a big deal. So for instance, East Palo Alto, their office development was limited by the amount of water rights they had, right?
yes,
Which is why they
Mhm.
purchased water rights for Mountain View, right? And they also got water rights for us, although we didn't charge for it. But that's a different topic. But yeah, water rights is actually a big deal because when you do increase the number of people living and working here, you have to you have to see that into account, right? Otherwise, more people have to turn off the sprinklers to the lawn, right? Especially during droughts. But it's a good question about that. I do think the city actually does keep that into account because I think like East Palo Alto wasn't able to build more office because you guys probably know they built a bunch of stuff in East Palo Alto and they were limited by how much more they could expand because they ran out of water rights. So I do think that there is, I'm not entirely sure on this, but I do think that is factored in. But the problem is that I think even if you do have water rights, like for us in Palo Alto, we have the water rights, but we are, there's global warming. I mean, so the amount of um, like rainwater and the heat is going up. So there's definitely less water in general, and so like more and more droughts are tending to happen, right?
yes,
So I think that is a very good point because I think um, besides sea level rise, right, which is another issue, um, there may be less like I saw a study about like the snowpack where a lot of our water comes from, like in the Sierras, that there's less
Yeah.
in
yes,
general, like not some years is better, some years is worse, right? But in general, there's less snowfall, right? And so that means the amount of fresh water you have is actually less. And so some of the historical um, amount of water that we had, we may not have anymore, right? So it might
yes,
become a lot more restricted.
yes,
So we have to be very conscious of that.
yes,
Otherwise, um, otherwise, there's going to be a lot more rationing and type of stuff that has to happen.
yes,
But ecologically, maybe I mean one thing about like for me, I think we're actually mandated in our city to have green like to actually have like um, uh, have lawns in front of our yard. But I do wonder, given there's just the whole natural um, I think we're going to go into more droughts more often, unfortunately.
yes,
And
yes,
I do wonder whether we should think of alternatives, right? Where we can, um, yeah. Anyways, that's a little bit. It's more of an ecological question, right? Of like, do lawns make sense at this point in time? But anyways, that's a different topic. So, but Jerry, that's a very, very, very good point about how um, like what is the impact of water rights, right? And there's also just overall infrastructure, right?
You can't manufacture what you can't have. And, restrictions are okay, but they really don't do as much as we would like to do in terms of limiting our water use. Not everybody is compliant. So it's a big question when I see more impact. There can be more showers, more washing dishes, more this, more that. It all takes water.
Well, we should
So-
definitely not try to waste water. That's for sure.
No.
But there is a good point that as you um, as if there's more people living and working here, definitely the water needs will probably go up in general. But I do
Right.
think I do appreciate the city's initiative about. I mean, so in the world right now, we're almost 8 billion people, which is like, I think about the time when I was born and how many people there are now, right? Just the population is huge now, like just worldwide, not just here in California, but worldwide. And so I do think we need to have kind of like a smaller environmental footprint, right? So I think we need to, I do think trying to be environmentally conscious is probably a good thing, right? And very conscious about, what is the footprint, our carbon footprint, so to speak, is because, yeah, unfortunately, I think the trends are headed, actually with the whole global warming is headed kind of in a direction which might make it much more um, of something that we have to focus on, right? I just got a little notice from Sabrina on this. So we have a couple more minutes here. So I wanted to just ask Raghu um, or Jerry, if you guys have any other thoughts, comments, questions. Um, I can say that, that this is, I think the deadline for the appeal for the RHND is July 10th, and today is the 5th.
The fifth,
So,
yes.
and
Yes.
there's no council session between now and the 10th, which is
Yes, I don't know what's going on,
because really this maybe should have been the agenda topic,
Yes,
one of the many agenda topics that, so I don't know where the agenda scheduling was, but it is kind of unfortunate because I know there's a bunch of
Excellent.
other things that we were supposed to talk about that got pushed out because we were flat out of time. But
yeah, but it's a
actually,
huge impact,
yeah, well, I mean, the one thing I was just thinking about is a lot of councils don't go on break, because it's not like, I mean, we're all here, we're all sheltering in place, right? So maybe it would have made sense for us to actually have a few more meetings or something. I don't know. I mean, it just seems like because I know I didn't go anywhere. I think a lot of people, especially with the shelter in place, really aren't going anywhere, right? So
No,
maybe
I'm not going anywhere.
Well,
yeah,
no.
I was really surprised that the whole month of July is gone,
Well, and that from like parts of June and July, and then I think it's not till like the first or second week of August that we meet again, which is
Yeah,
I don't. There are a lot of other city councils, they keep on going, right? So I don't know. I'm sure there's a good historical reason why, but especially for this year, and there's so much stuff on our plates that
yes,
we didn't get to deal with, and it's unfortunate that important topics like this don't get deliberated. Um,
yes.
yes, because it's anyways, I got a message from Serena. We gotta get running here. But any last words before we jump off this call?
I
I hope you
appreciate the
can,
time.
Yeah,
yeah,
well, thank you, Jerry, for joining.
yeah, I appreciate your time also, but if there's anything you can do in terms of sending letters to other city council members, please do and express our concerns. There are a whole bunch of people like us who are worried and something needs to be done. If you can reach out to the other council members, it will be very useful, Councilman Tanaka.
Okay, well, thank you guys so much for your time this holiday weekend. And yeah, anytime I could help, just let me know. Thank you.
Okay,
Okay.
appreciate